Hi guys, welcome back to my channel where the gnomes live. This is Sharon Oyella, and today we're going to be building a bay window for your fairy house or your gnome house. But before we do that, I just want to quickly show you my new renovated craft room. My boyfriend just spent the last couple of months redoing this entire room. Floor, walls, ceiling, electrical, new window, everything. This room is completely bare bones, and he built it back up again. And he also built me a soundproof editing room. Here's my editing room here. And he surprised me on Valentine's Day with a reveal, and he put in a pink shag rug and a little bouncy ball there that I can sit on while I'm reviewing my videos. All right, guys, now that you've seen my new rooms, I'm going to get back to the bay window now. Before we get started, just going to let you know that I had a video tutorial filmed for these red windows. I also filmed installing them. Before I had a chance to get them uploaded to YouTube, my hard drive fried and I didn't have any backup. So I had to get a new hard drive put in, and then I had to refilm the video tutorial for you. So that's these green windows here. So I did this one, and then I also did the one on my table right here. I filmed this one. So you're not going to miss anything. You still get all the video tutorial, but I'm just letting you know that that's what happened, because I had announced it on Instagram and then I didn't come back for 3 weeks. And I didn't come back for 3 weeks because my computer was down. Anyways, let's get back to the bay window. Now we'll jump into the supplies list and then we'll start building those windows. You're going to want some cardboard, and for the glass I'm using plastic packaging. And you'll need an X-Acto blade and a ruler. You'll need some paper towel. This is a 2-ply that I'm using. And I'm using 2 different glues, Elmer's glue all and a tacky glue. And I did frame the inside of these windows, and for that I used these pieces of wood that I had on hand. This is just what I had in my stash, don't know where they came from. If you don't have that, you can use cereal cardboard and double it up and make a frame that way. And if you do use wood pieces like I do in this video, then you'll need an emery board or a piece of sandpaper. And for these window divider thingies, you can use matchsticks or double up some cereal cardboard. Before we get started, I'm just going to show you the basic construction of these windows so you have a good idea before we dive in here. So I'm making 2 different windows, right? One with 3 panes in it. And this is 4 pieces of cardboard that they're going to get sandwiched in between. And this one is 5.5 inches wide and 4.5 inches deep. And the depth is going to change once we install the window. Okay, so that was for our 3 window. And for our bay window that has 4 panes in it, this one is going to be 7 inches wide, and it's the same depth. It's going to be 4.5 inches deep. And again, that depth is going to change once we install the window. Now that you've seen the basic parts that we're going to need to put a window together, we're going to start building a window. And I'm going to start with the 3-pane window first. So this is the top and the bottom of the window. I need 4 pieces. This is the one that is 5.5 inches wide. If you're using cardboard that has a bit of a shine on one side, you want to make sure that you sand that down. It doesn't take much, just a light sanding. And then I'm going to brush on the glue from edge to edge. You want to make sure it's nice and even right across, cover the entire surface with the glue. And then you're going to glue 2 pieces together. I'm going to add some masking tape on each side just to keep it from slipping while I weigh these down to dry them. I want these to dry flat, so I weighed them down with books and my bottle of glue. And I'll leave those dry while I go ahead and construct these windows. And for each window, I need 2 pieces of cardboard. Okay, so for a 3-pane window, you need 6 pieces. And then for a 4-pane window, you need 8 pieces. And these ones are all the same size, just to make my job a little bit easier. They're a little bit better than 2 inches wide, and they're all 3.5 inches long. With the basic measurements out of the way, let's start cutting these windows. So I'm going to start with a piece of cardboard that's already been squared up, and I'm going to cut it at 3.5 inches. That will be the length of the window. And now I'm going to cut it at 2 inches wide, or just a little bit better. Once I have the first window cut, I can use it as a template to cut the rest. I don't need the ruler anymore. But if you feel safer with the ruler, go ahead and use one. Once you have all your pieces cut, now you can start cutting out the center. And I found the easiest measurements for me to go by was 1/2 inch at the top and bottom. So I'll measure across there and draw a line. So that's top. And now for the bottom, same thing. I'm going to measure 1/2 inch. and draw a line. And then the sides is going to be 1/4 inch. So I'll measure that off and I'll draw a line. Now I'm going to cut where those points intersect. And I won't use a ruler. I found it easier just to use the X-Acto blade and just follow that line. You might find it easier to use a ruler, but I found this worked best for me. So I'm just going to cut that out. And when you pick it up, it might not be totally cut through, so just rock it gently back and forth until it separates. And now I can use this one as a template for the rest of them. Make sure if you do it this way to lay it flat on the table and then draw it out. Before I carry on to the next step, I just need to construct a little dryer to hang my windows on, so I'm just using some basic skewers and a piece of styrofoam. I'm going to tape those skewers up so they don't hang down when I put my windows on them. Cardboard, once you cut into it, it has an open edge that is unpaintable. So to make this paintable, I'm going to glue on some paper towel. Now I found the easiest way to do this was to cut out a piece that fits the window itself. One piece of paper towel will do 2 windows because this is a 2-ply paper towel. Once I have my pieces cut, I'm going to separate the layers. Separate those layers because you don't want to have bulky paper towel for this part. And because one side of my cardboard is painted, I'm going to glue the paper towel to the painted side. It doesn't really matter, but that's what I chose to do. Once you brush the glue on, make sure you're going edge to edge again, and then you can put your paper towel right on top. And I just get a little assembly line going here. I did all my pieces at once. Then I'm going to cut off the excess paper towel around the edge. I'm going to slit down the middle, and then I'm going to slit into each corner. And now I'm going to cut the excess paper towel off. You just want a little bit to roll over into the side of your cardboard. You don't want it like doubling over. Okay, so I just cut every piece down. And I'll do a couple more pieces so you know what I mean here. First, I'm going to cut off the excess, slit down the middle, slice to each corner. Cut off the excess, leave about 1/4 inch there. And now I'm going to brush the glue on, and then using my paintbrush, I'm going to pull the paper towel up and over and then paint over it. And you don't want any bumps or wrinkles during this part either, so make sure that you're painting it down flat. And now I'm going to paint the glue over the other side as well, just to make sure that my paper towel is thoroughly stuck down. And we'll do it again. Paint the glue on, and then pull up the paper towel, and then paint over the paper towel. Turn it over, and then brush the glue on this side as well. And then hang to dry. The next step will be to color the inside edge of each cardboard piece, and I use the exterior color to do all of the cardboard pieces. I found this the best way because no matter what you're painting the interior of your bay window, if you're looking from the outside in and you have a different color on one of these edges here, you'll see that color jump, and I didn't really like that. So I found it the best way to do the exterior color on both sides of the window, if you know what I mean. You'll see in a minute here when we put it together. So I do the inside edge and a little bit on the window frame itself. Okay, and then I'll let that dry. Now we're ready to add the plastic in between and glue 2 pieces together to make one window. You want to have enough cardboard around the edge, of course, so I did trim up this little piece of plastic here a little bit more, so I have a little bit more cardboard to work with. And then I'll take a little piece of masking tape. I'm going to cut down into 4 slices. Okay, so I'm going to add the masking tape, and I'm using my fingernail to go right along the edge to make sure it's got good contact. All right, and then I use some hot glue to glue the two cardboard pieces together. The dot of hot glue, I actually make sure it hits each corner of the plastic as well. And then I can stick the other piece on there and let that hot glue cool down, but make sure that you hold it until it cools down, otherwise it'll separate. Some of them might be separated here in the center, like this one here, so I just add a bead of hot glue here and just hold it until it cools down. I'm going to be adding paper towel around all four edges of the window, so I need something for the window to sit on, so it'll keep it off the table so all four sides can dry at the same time. I'm going to fold a piece of paper towel and I'm going to tear all four sides. You don't want to cut these pieces. And one piece will do top and bottom because I'm going to separate the layers. And then for the side pieces, you want to make sure that you're tearing them narrow enough so they don't hit the plastic on either side, of course. So you just want to measure that out. And then you paint on the glue, lay that right in the center, and then paint over the paper towel. Now all four sides are done, and I'm going to remove my fingers here and I'm going to slide them off. I found that better. Otherwise, if I just pull my fingers off, it kind of takes the paper towel with it. So I just kind of slid along until I was able to let go. Moving on, we're going to paint the interior side of the windows before we assemble the windows. For this one, I used antique white. I also used texture paint, which I'll show you when we get to the exterior side. Here I used burnt umber to edge out the interior side of the window, and I'm doing that because I noticed with my first bay window that I made, when I glued some wood pieces to the inside, if you see here, there's a little bit of wonkiness to this cardboard because it's only cardboard. And if you look from the outside in, even with my wooden pieces attached later on, I could still see a little bit of that color jump, and I didn't like that at all. So I'm just going to edge this out first before I add on my wooden pieces, which will also be painted burnt umber. So this just kind of serves the purpose of there won't be any color jumps that we see from the outside looking in. And you can actually just do this step without adding any wood to it after. In fact, one of my bay windows is done just this way. There's no wooden pieces added at all, but it adds a nice little frame just with paint. And I found it goes a lot quicker if I just dip the wooden piece right into the paint bottle and then paint off the excess. And I'm using a binder clip to hold them off the tabletop as they dry. And once these were dry, I need the other ends painted too because I need them longer. So I just get a bundle in my hand and then I'll just paint the ends. And then I'll just sit them on the cardboard piece under my hand there to dry. All right, now we're going to glue them to the window. And what I do is do the top and bottom first. So I'm just going to measure this off here. So this first cut will measure the bottom cut. Okay, so just making sure I got the right length there. And I'll cut that. And I'll use that as the measuring stick to cut the other one. But first I'm going to file down the ends, make sure it's nice and flat. And now I'll cut this other one. These two have to be the same length, of course. And I just found this was the easiest way to do it without having to use a ruler. Okay, and now I'll get the length here that I need. File off the ends just like the first two. And then cut the other one. That way both of these are the same length. And I'm going to assemble this right on top of my table. Now my table has Mac Tack on it. If you don't have Mac Tack, you can use wax paper. You just use a little dot on each end, and then you can assemble the frame right on top of your wax paper or Mac Tack. Add a little pressure on each side to make sure that they're full contact and then just move it aside. And I found by the time I got the bead of glue around the window itself, I was able to pick up that frame off the table without it falling apart. But I'm using tacky glue, which grabs on a lot faster. If you're using just regular white PVA glue, you might have to leave that frame on the table for a little longer. But tacky glue grabs pretty fast. See that? Pick it right up. Just makes the job a lot easier than having to assemble it on the window frame itself. Now you need a little bit of pressure on top. So I just put a couple of cardboard pieces down in a full bottle of paint, and I'll leave it for about 15 minutes. Now we're ready to assemble the window. So these are the pieces that we made at the beginning. There's two different window base here. So I'm just going to remove the masking tape. And I'm going to assemble the 3-pane bay window first. So we're going to start with the middle. And to do this, I've already marked this off. You just place the middle down and then make sure you have the exact amount of space on either side, and then just make a mark. Okay, so I'm going to use hot glue to start with. This will just hold it in place until I can get the actual glue on there. So I'll start with the middle. Make sure you got the interior facing the right way. I've done it the other way before and then have to take it apart. Okay, and then I brought the one corner down right, you see where my thumbnail is pointing there. So I want to make sure I'm doing that on the other side as well. That way I don't have to measure anything. Okay, and I'm checking out the interior side here because I want to make sure that everything is lining up fairly good. And now I can cut off the excess of the base, and an X-Acto knife works best for this part. So you just cut around the front of the windows. Fairly easy. And now that's cut out, I can use it as a template for the top piece. So I'm just going to line up the back, and then I'll draw around the front. Cut off the excess. Oh, and I forgot to add the bead of glue in the front here. It'd just be easier to do it now before I add the top piece. And then I'll add in my hot glue along the top. And I'll stick on the top piece, but you got to make sure that the windows are lining up because they are still floppy in there. So before you add any pressure, just make sure you've lined them up pretty good. And now I'll add the tacky glue here on the top piece. And now for the 4-bay window, this is assembled a little bit differently, but not much. And you can play around with the placement of these as well, guys. I'm just going to show you a very simple way to do it here. So again, I'm just marking off the first two and making sure I have the exact amount of space on either side. And now I'm marking off a 1/2 inch. I'm going to draw a line. So when I add my first window, I'm going to have the front corner at the very edge and then the back corner on the line. So I'll do this for this second window as well. So the back edge corner is right on that line. So this one will go on that line and then to the edge. Okay, and then cut off the excess. And then use that as a template, just like we did for the first one, and draw a line. This one I found it easier to use a ruler to help my X-Acto blade go exactly where I wanted it, so just line them up with the lines. And remember, all these placements are totally up to you. This was just a simple put together here. Hot glue and then the tacky glue. Alright guys, now we're ready to paint, but there is an unpaintable edge right here, and there's also a very large gap in between these two windows. Now, I had this gap here on purpose, just to show you how to fix it if you ended up with a gap this large. You can move on to the paper towel stage without doing the twine that I'm going to show you in a second. I'm going to put some twine in here. You can totally skip this and it'll be just fine. But if you would prefer to get rid of a gap that large, you can just shove a piece of twine in there. So I took a piece of twine and I dipped it in the glue, made sure the glue was completely covering that twine, and now I'll just use my paintbrush to make sure it's in there nice and even. So again, this step could be skipped if you want to skip it and just use the paper towel in the next clip. it will totally work out. But sometimes those gaps are a little bit too large, right? So we want to have some tips on how to fix those. And the same goes for the interior side. I have a little bit of a gap here, so I'm just going to use twine to fix that. You can use cereal cardboard, just cut a narrow strip and use it like a baseboard, and that would work too. But I find the string here is very handy because you can get it to bend in any shape that you need it to bend into, and there isn't anything that you have to struggle with. So I found twine for this part much easier. I'm using cotton string here on this one. It's a little bit thinner than the twine, so it filled in that gap very nicely. So I'm just going over it with a paintbrush and glue, just making sure it's got full contact. And if you do this, you're going to have a glue shine along your painted surface, so you're going to have to repaint that surface, which is not a big deal for me. So here I am with the paint again, and I'll just paint over this now that it's dry. All right, so moving on to the paper towel, just like we did for the windows, we're going to make these unpaintable edges paintable. So I'm just going to tear down, and again, you want to tear down these ones, don't cut them. It just gives you a more paintable edge for the paper towel if you tear them. They stick better and they look better. Okay, and then separate the layers, of course. You don't want bulky paper for this part. And make sure that the center ones are narrow enough that they won't touch your plastic. And I should also add, if you do hit the plastic with your paintbrush, not a big deal. Don't try to clean it while it's wet. Just leave it dry on your window, and then once it's dry, you can scrape it off with your fingernail. And that goes for the paint as well. Much easier just to let it dry. This gives you a really strong window as well, guys. Once this paper towel is dry, you not only have paintable edges, you also have a very strong piece. I use paper towel a lot for strength. And the trick is to always make sure you're laying paper towel down on glue. You don't want to lay it down on anything dry. And then you just paint over it. Use your paintbrush to smooth out those center pieces there between the windows, because you want to have that separation there. And now these windows are ready for paint, and I'm going to be using texture paint. I'm going to encourage you to look up how to make texture paint. I'm using baking soda, but there's other ways that you can do it. I found using this method for a while now that 2 ounces of paint works best with 5 teaspoons of baking soda. Okay, so this is a 2-ounce bottle that I always have ready to measure paint out with. And there's my baking soda. I keep it in a jar so it's easier to scoop out. And I'm going to put in 6 teaspoons of baking soda. And the reason why I'm putting 6 is so I can show you what happens if you use a little bit too much baking soda. You'll get a film on your finished painted piece once it's dry. It'll show the sodium of the baking soda showing through. It'll be like a white film. For me, it's not a big deal. I'll just paint over it and it goes away. But for some people, that might cause a little bit of a panic mode. Okay, so here's my paper towel. Looks pretty good, but like I said, there's little squares in there I want to cover up. So this is why I use texture paint now. The other thing I found with texture paint is it's scratchable. So once it's dry, and if you lay it on the floor and you move it or something, it's going to leave a scratch. So this is another reason why I paint over it once the texture paint is dry. And I did, I think, 2 coats of that texture paint, and you can see here the film that's left behind. On the left, you can see that white. That's the sodium of the baking soda showing through. The one on the right, I did paint over, and you can see that went away. So I am going to do a coat of just paint without any texture in it, but first I'm going to add my little window divider thingies. And you can use matches for this. I could have used a match very easily, but I ended up using those pieces of wood that I had on hand, and I had to glue 2 of them together to get the right thickness. Okay, so 2 of these pieces here, and I did glue them together. Once they were dry, I painted them. So 3 sides got painted green, and then the one side that's going to be shown on the interior side, I painted with the burnt umber, and that would match the interior of the frames. Okay, so 3 sides of green and then 1 side of burnt umber. And to make this as accurate as possible, do the vertical part first, and this first one is going to determine the length of the other two. So if you make these all the same length, then you won't have any problems with it looking wonky in the end. Okay, and then the ones that go across horizontal, each one has to be cut individually to fit each window because we used cardboard and each window is a little bit different in width. So I found if I cut it just a little bit too big and then just file it down a little bit, and I still have to kind of push it in there, that's better because it will hold while the glue is drying. So do the middle part first. So I stick that in. Just a dot of glue on each end is all it needs. You don't want to put too much glue here, otherwise you'll end up with it on your window. So just a little dot on each end, and the middle first, and then the horizontal one goes in after. So see, they're all the same height because that middle piece was done first. So now I'm going to go ahead and paint this one with just regular paint, and I actually ended up changing the color slightly because I ran out of this hunter green that I was using, so I had to go with another green. And I'm going to dirty up the exterior a little bit in the next video, so it's going to change color slightly. And the interior, I did do the top and bottom with this antique white, and I'm going to show you in the next video how you can add a floorboard to this window as well. So that will bring us to the end of this video. I'm so happy I got through it. It was a lot of work on my part, guys, to get this done. So in the next video, we're going to install the window, and you can find that video popping up on your screen or look in the pinned comment below for the links that you need. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in part 2.